How's it going, guys? In this video series we'll be building a property tech website. Now there are a number of property tech websites online. In this example I'm going to use something similar to Domain. So Domain is an Australian property search website, and you can see on the homepage they have multiple listings where you can click through to this profile and you can see information here about the agent, the leasing agent for that property. And we have some description info, the ability to make bookings for a private meeting to view the property, and and then there's other similar properties in the area. For the purpose of this video, we'll be focusing on adding listings, signing users up, and being able to have a profile for each property. And possibly in later videos then we will get into more specific features on the platform. And the first thing I'm going to do here is just jump in and set up a new application. Now this is pretty standard. You've probably seen me do this in some of the other videos I posted. So right now we're just installing all of the required gems, and this normally takes a few minutes to set up, but once we have the app set up, then it's much faster to develop later. So now that this is finished, we will change directory into our new Property Finder app, and then we will open up the folder within our code editor. If we go inside our database file, we can see that we're using Postgres, and our Ruby version is 2.6.3, and we're using Rails 6.00 to build this application. So now we can go ahead and set up our database, and if we run the db-migrate command, now it will create a schema file for us. And just to keep things organized, I'm going to commit this code into Git. So Git is for version control, and we will just add all of the app files to begin with. So now we want to set up our first controller, and we will call this public, and we will create a main method within that public controller. We're going to use this for our home page, and we can add in the default root path here for our application. So that will be the first page that users see once they visit our app. So now Rails is starting up. We have started the Rails server, and we're seeing a bit of an issue here already. So let's have a look and see what's going on. So we'll just run the bundle install command, and it is, oh, okay, we've got a typo here. So we need to add a hashtag instead of that slash. I don't know why that's in there. And we'll just reload this again. And we've got this working now. Okay. So now we can open up our main HTML file and just replace some of the text in here. We'll style this up in a little bit later, but let's just add some dummy text for now. And we will do something similar to what we saw on the property listing website. So we'll say search for your new home today, and we can just start with that first. So now let's set up our user accounts. So we'll use the devise gem for that, and what we need to do here is install, and then we need to run the devise install command too. So Rails generate devise install, okay, and now we can update this environment file to include the default URL for mailers. And we'll just follow the instructions here, and just to make sure everything's set up correctly. So now we can go ahead and set up our devise model. And you can always refer back to the documentation to get the exact setup routine for setting up devise. So this has created a migration for us under the db-migrate folder structure. And in this case, we're going to enable the tracking and the confirmable on our devise accounts. So that means that users will have to confirm their email, and we'll be able to see what IP address they sign in with. And we'll also add a few extra fields here, first name, last name, and we can have a profile URL in here too. So this will just allow us to customize the accounts a little bit, make them a little bit more user-friendly, so we can see who the agent name is, go to their profile, etc., and see what other properties they may have. So these are good things to have, and we'll just do it from the outset here. And now we can see that the new routes have been set up for devise. I'm going to use the Rails generate scaffold command here to create our properties. Now this should create a lot of the views and the migrations and things for us. So we'll just pass in some parameters here. We want to create a name column, address, a price, how many rooms are available in that property, and the bedrooms. So we can start with this, and we can always add more fields later, but I think this is a good start for now. And probably one of the most important things to add here is a photo for the property. Now we may add a gallery separately, but I think it's always good just to have one photo that is maybe set as a background at the top of the page to make the listing look more attractive. So we'll go with that for now, and we'll run our migration here and see how things look. So I've just realized we've forgotten something very important here, and that is to connect our properties to our accounts. So we can go ahead and roll back that migration first, and we'll just add that additional field, and we'll add that as a reference. And adding it as a reference will allow Rails to create the proper indexing on the column name. So let's go ahead now and run that migration again. And now we can see that we've got this model already set up for us for the property. And we should now enable a couple of things here. We want to add confirmable and trackable to our account for devise. And then we want to create the relationship to say that the account has many properties. So now let's add some additional markup to our page. We want to include a menu on the home page that allows users to log in or sign up. So we will link that using a render, and we will add a partial file here within the layouts folder. And what I'm going to do here real quick is just get the latest version of Bootstrap and install it. So I could use the gem for this, and there is a gem listed on the Bootstrap page, but just as a quick measure to get this running, I'm just going to drop in these links directly into our template. And a good way to save time when setting up a new application is to use some of the templating that is available. Now Bootstrap already has some of these templates on their website which you can use, and in this case I'm just going to copy the navigation structure here and paste it into our app, and then we can tweak it just to make it fit what we're trying to do. So already we've got a working drop-down menu, we've got links and a search box. So let's go ahead and also copy this top section. So I think it makes the website look a little bit more legitimate. We've got an actual navigation plus a kind of banner at the top and some content layout. So that will save us some time. So let's just replace this. And we can also add in a footer for our page. And we will create a new file just to paste that code into for now. So under layouts, we'll create the footer file, and then we can just update this with our own information here. And that's already starting to look very good for us now. It looks actually like we've got something done, and that's less than 10 minutes already. So now back within our navigation file, I'm just going to update these links to make them fit more with the site that we're trying to build. So some links that refer to latest properties, maybe. We can add something here for sign in and a create account. So we can make this log in and then sign up. And we could also add another link here for advertising. So that's something we'll probably not get around to in this video, but something we can add later. And then we'll need to add in the proper URLs for these. So we can copy and paste in the correct URL for create a new account and logging in. So now let's check this out, and we can see now we've got these links at the top, and it looks like we've got something on our site now. It's starting to fill out a little bit. Now you'll see there is a little bit of an issue with the styling at the top. There is this background color behind each of the links, and it turns out that's because of the scaffold CSS style sheets that comes as part of a default when we use the scaffolding feature in Rails. So we can just comment this out, and it means that everything kind of looks normal again. And in fact, you can go ahead and delete that scaffolding style sheet altogether. So we'll do that in this case. So now I'm going to use another template here from Bootstrap, and it is for this sign in page, and we can also use the same style for the sign up page. So it looks pretty clean, quite nicely laid out. So it will save us a bunch of time if we just use this code that already exists for that. Just paste it in, and we will try to fill out the fields here as best as we can. And the first thing we can do is just remove this icon at the top. So we don't need that for now. And we'll just paste in the fields that we need within this layout. So we'll need the email address here, and we will need our password. And we can delete this old code then and just remove the form tags and then replace it with the end tag here to close off our Rails form. And I'm going to add another style sheet here just for devise, and I will paste in the code from our template from Bootstrap. So this is the style sheet I'm pasting in, and I'm just going to replace the class name because this is the default class that's added by Rails for this devise form. And you can use indentation here and tidy up this style sheet to use Sass rather than CSS. So we can just wrap these all within this form sign-in tag. And in fact, if we name this correctly, we can use it for both the sign-in and sign-up. So let's change this to form auth class, and then we'll add this as a wrapper. So let's add a section tag here and wrap it around our sign-in form. And I think this form will look better if it's centered, and that just centers all the links at the bottom as well. So we can also tidy up our sign up page now using the same approach. And I'm just going to skip over this a little bit quicker here because we're basically repeating the same thing that we did in the sign in page. And while we clean up this sign up page, I just want to remind you guys that I will be launching some of these MVPs on my website, so you can see the link in the description of the video below. And as always, if you're enjoying this content, make sure and subscribe, as I will be creating a lot more MVPs in the future. So now going back to our sign up page, things are looking much tidier now, and I'm overall very happy with how these pages are looking, these devise pages. And the next step for this is really adding these parameters to our application controller. So we've got additional fields in here for first name, last name, and URL. So we want to allow the user to add these when they sign up. And even once they are signed in and editing their account, we want them to be able to modify these fields. So now we can try signing up for a new account. So now it looks like we are signed up. However, on the home page we can't really tell. But if we look at our server log, we can see that an email has been sent. So once we try logging in now, we can just see that there are still got this login sign up button. So we'll actually have to modify the the public navigation to check to see if the user is actually signed in. And I guess what we want here is if the user signed in, we have the option to sign them out. But if they're not signed in, then we should show this sign up, sign in navigation links. So now once we reload the page, we should be able to see the sign out link or the log out link. And once we click that, then we're signed out again. But what we'd really like to see here is once we're signed in, we would like to see a dashboard. And there is this template here on Bootstrap for a dashboard. So let's get things prepared for that. And the first thing we can do now is set up a new controller. And we can do that using the Rails G controller command, and we'll call this controller dashboard, and then we will add a method for this called index. And we can also add some additional methods here that we can fill out later. So now within our public navigation, let's update this to check if the user is logged in. And if they're logged in, then we can show a link to the dashboard. And if they're not logged in, then we will just be linking back to the home page. So using reg routes, we can see our path again for this dashboard. And we can see here that the routes are not quite named the way we want them. So we can customize a name on those routes for dashboard and dashboard properties or reports. So it looks like we made a mistake in our routes file. So let's go back and see what we've done. Okay, so our formatting of this URL isn't quite right. But now we have it working. What we want to do now is copy some of this markup to create this left navigation once the user is logged in. So we'll just copy that from the Bootstrap dashboard example, and then we can paste that into our own application and modify the links and afterwards. When writing logic like this, we should really be moving it outside of the views, so probably into a helper method for this, but we can come back and tidy this up later. It's just to see if we can get things up and running first without spending a lot of time here. So just to summarize what we're trying to achieve here, we want to show this public navigation if the user is on the home page or the sign up page. But if they are not on those pages, we want to see the dashboard, so the left side menu, and show them a different experience once they're signed in. Along with copying over the HTML for this layout, we will also need to copy over the style sheet that is used to give that the proper layout, the proper design. So we'll put this into our dashboard style sheet. So now I will copy over the main body content, so this graph at the top and the other parts to the dashboard itself. So let's put this into our dashboard view. So this is our index file for our dashboard, and see what happens. Okay, so things are starting to look reasonable, but we are missing our graph here. We can actually just take out this graph for now, as we don't have any need for it. So now let's try to tidy up this search bar at the very top, and we will just give it this darker theme like we see here in the demo. And we can fix this by moving our Bootstrap style sheet above our application style sheet. And we can see here that our footer is looking a little bit out of place, so we will remove that temporarily. And I want to look now at the icons on the left side and customizing that navigation. And we also have this white space at the top of our dashboard which we want to remove. And we can see here that that is being caused by this notification paragraph that is embedded in our layout template, our application template. So back in our dashboard now, and we want to remove this sidebar and move it out into a different file. That way we can reuse it for different views on different pages that we're at within the dashboard. So we will set up a new file for that under Layouts Nav folder that we have created earlier. And then we'll just paste in that code for that sidebar navigation. And in fact, what we can do here is even move some more of this code out to the application template. So really in this dashboard file, we just want the body content that is on the dashboard. We don't want to have the structure of the sidebars and all the rest of it. So let's move that out into the application template. I'll just take a moment here while I'm cleaning this up just to let you know that most of these MVPs I'm actually putting out for sale. Now, I normally go ahead and finish them out a little better after I finish the video, but I also do some custom work on some of these MVPs for potential clients. So if that's something you're interested in, you can actually buy the MVP and I can do additional work on it to add your branding, your logo, or some custom navigation. And you could even add custom integration for payment gateways, possibly to have a sponsored listing or advertising, things like that. So back to the video now. What I'm doing here is just replacing these links within the dashboard side navigation. So I want to add them as Rails links. So remove the default HTML link and style it up in the Rails way here. So we're going to try and wrap this as a block, this link. So make this link into a block, and then we will have the icon within that block. So Rails is complaining at us here at the moment, but we can go back to our routes and see what's going on here. And as it turns out, there's a typo here that I have in my dashboard path. But that's not the key issue here. I think there's maybe a mistake in the way I've formatted this link block. I should really be moving that path down into the body, or that content down into the body of the block. So let's move that a little bit now. Okay, so that is working now. And what we can do is continue to do that for the other links here. So we can just copy and paste this and then just change the path. So we've added our properties into this sidebar. Now we can go ahead and try that out. And we can see here we've got this list and we have the form to add this property. So let's test out this form and see if it works. And it is telling us that the account must exist. So it looks like we have to set the account ID here within our controller. So we can just do that using the logged in current account. And then at the top of this controller we can make a before action just to ensure that the user is actually logged in before they create a property. Okay, so now we've got our first property created and we can see it here on the list. And now we're going to see if we can find some icons for our sidebar. I'm using fellericons.com here, as this is part of what was in the template originally from Bootstrap. Now in here we can search for the icons that we want to use on the sidebar. So for properties we really want to have something a bit like the home icon, but in most cases the home icon is used for the dashboard, so it's possibly a little bit confusing in our case. So what I have done here is just skipped ahead a little bit, and I've added in this script for the filler.js, and then I'm running filler.replace. And what I'm trying to do here is basically set these inline elements using the HTML markup, and then we'll use the JavaScript to generate this SVG icon. So we'll just remove those hard-coded SVGs right now and then replace these to match. So we'll use a package to say that it is our property. And just as an example here, I'll use gift for products, and you can see that is updated. So we can come back and update these later, but I just want to show how I will be adding these icons. So you can see here that I've done some updates to that left navigation. I've added viewings with a calendar and removed some of the reports. So the next thing I want to do is update this property profile view. So right now it's just showing like really basic information about the property. But first we can tidy up this table using the Bootstrap classes, and already that looks much nicer in terms of layout. We could actually change these buttons too to make them more Bootstrap styled, but we'll add some styling to this form first. So now let's reload our form page and see how we look. And it's looking quite reasonable right now. It's much tidier, better spacing. We can update this heading tag to make it a little bit smaller. We'll use the H3 class, and that's looking better. There is some spacing issues at the top of this page we want to get rid of too. So we'll look at that shortly. And on the bottom there is a little bit of tightness around these buttons and form fields. So I think if we get the classes right here, we can space this out. Now I want to move this validation message into a partial. So we'll put that in our layouts folder, call the file validation, and we'll pass in the object that we're trying to save or validate in this case. So this can be used within all of the form views that we have on our app. So let's create something that's reusable and not messing up our views. So now I want to try and fix this spacing issue at the top. It's very close. The headline is very close to the search box at the top, and I think we can adjust that from within the template itself. So just by adding some margin to the top of this container, it's starting to look a little bit better now. The spacing is looking good for us. So now let's go and fix our sign out link at the top right. So at the moment this is just a dummy URL, but we can make this into our proper URL here using our sign out path. So now let's reload the page and try out our new link. And that's working nicely. So trying to sign in again, I'm noticing here that we have this navigation menu. Now that shouldn't be here, so let's go and see what's going on here. And we can see here that we have got devise as one of the controllers that we were showing the public layout. But if we go to the login page, we're actually using a sessions controller, so that's kind of skipping that public view and displaying that navigation for the dashboard instead. So we're noticing some styling issue in the very top here of our page on the navigation. So let's add some body classes and IDs to our layout based on, we can actually base this on the controller that we're using and the action that we're using on any page. So we can set styles appropriate for each page. So in this case, we're going to wrap all our styles here for the dashboard, and that way they won't affect the user when they're not logged in. So that's looking quite nice. However, once we go to properties, we can see that this is a problem because we are on the properties controller and not the dashboard controller. So what we can do, a quick measure to fix this is just adding the properties to the CSS file that we added. So in here we can just add this onto the dashboard, and that should fix it temporarily. We may look into a more permanent fix for this, but for now this is fine. So we want to resize this headline just like the other ones. You'll notice when we click the back button here, we can see this signed in successfully. Now that's only appearing here because it has not been displayed already. So we really want to have that within the body of the page to be able to display notifications. Even if we hide it initially, that is fine, but we really want a place for that to be output to the page. So we will temporarily set this as a notifications ID, and then within our style sheet, then we can just hide this for now. Going back to our listings page for the properties, let's add some styling to this button for new property, and we can change the color on that using the class, so that looks much better. And we'll just say save property here instead of submit. So on this show view for the property, this is going to be our profile page for the property, and we don't want to really have edit links or backlinks here, so we'll just take those out. So now we want to add the ability to upload photos within our application, and we will do that using the carrier wave gem along with the fog gem. And we'll use a mini magic gem for resizing images after they are being uploaded. So now we will modify our form for the properties and add in the extra field for the image. So let's just rename this to photo. And then within our controller for properties, we will need to whitelist this photo field and the photo cache so that we can store this to the database. So at this point we need to create a uploader class, and we can do that under a folder called uploaders. So I'm just going to copy and paste the code I have for this here in quickly. And this code that we're going to paste in here is actually supplied on the documentation for the carrier wave gem. So you can just get that on the carrier wave docs and paste it in there and just modify it to fit your needs. And now we just need to restart the server to get this up and running. So we've added our uploader, and once we restart this, we can see the new field has been added to the form. So under the development in our gem file, I'm going to use the Figaro gem, and I'm using this to handle the environment variables on localhost. You can create this new file and just paste in the credentials for your Amazon S3 account. And here I've also set up my carrier wave configuration. So again, I've pasted this code in, and you can find this code for this on the documentation. And just looking at my property here again, I want to be able to show that the actual saved version of the property, I want to be able to show that image once the user goes to edit that property again. So we can do that by checking if that photo is attached to this record, and if so, then we will show the thumbnail on the page. And it looks like here we need to include the actual URL of the image itself, and we do that in the image tag. And something is still not quite right here, but if we go back to our code, we can see that we are not using the property here. So our alias is for the property, and that photo is attached to the property, so that appears to be working now. And we can just add some margin to the top of this to space it out. So now let's log out again and have a look at the home page. And here on the home page we want to have the latest properties. So in order to do that, we will need to create a new file to contain those property loop. So we'll loop over some properties that have been added lately. We'll create a new partial to do that under the properties folder in the views. and then we will just loop over this properties array. So we'll load this from the controller in a few moments, but we'll just get some basic layout here first. And here we want to input an image tag, and we can add a class to this if we wish, but we can actually use a helper method for this, and the reason for doing that is that if a property gets added and there is no thumbnail yet for it, then we would want to show a placeholder image. So that shouldn't really be the case when adding properties. Really, every property should have a photo attached to it, but it's good to prepare for these measures just in case. So I have just found an image online and dropped it into the folder of our assets, our assets images folder, and that will be used as a placeholder image if there are no images attached to an individual project or an individual property, sorry. So now back on our homepage, let's create a section where we will be outputting our latest properties. And we can put that in within a container and a row, so that will just give it some layout so that it is centered on the page. So now back into our public controller for our homepage, let's load in the latest properties. And then within our property model, we can set a new scope for the latest properties. Using scopes allows us to easily chain database queries together to make it much more easy to select data in the future. So now we can see that our first image has loaded in correctly from that property. So we are loading in the property thumbnail right now, but we want to also add in the details, so like the name of the listing, how many rooms there are, just those kind of things to make this listing a little bit more complete. So we've also added the address at the bottom, and we can style this up a little bit, but our key focus at the moment is really getting the data just outputted on the page. So in time we can style this much further, but so far that's looking reasonable. We've got the name, the address, and the thumbnail. So we can actually push this section down a bit to space it from the rest of the page content. So let's do that now. Okay, so that's starting to look a little bit better now. We've got a bit of breathing room around the content, some white space there. So we can add additional properties in here to see how that looks. But one thing we should add in here is some additional details for the amenities of the property. So how many bathrooms there are, how many rooms there are, car parking spaces. These are all very important information when choosing a property, so we want to display those at the front. And we can go back and copy our icon, so we can use an icon to show each of these pieces of information, just to make it a little bit more interesting to the viewer. So just to show you what we are trying to achieve here, it's something a bit like this with these icons and a number beside it. Now we can go through this website to try and find something that's suitable, but it can be quite difficult to find the right icon for these things, so we're not going to focus on it too much, but that's something that we can always change later. So I think in the meantime we can go ahead and add some additional properties to see how this looks on the front end. And that's been added successfully, so let's go ahead and add one more. So now we can see that we have 3 listings now, and on the front end things aren't looking so good. We need to clean this up a little bit, so that's quite easy to fix. We can just change this to a 4-column width, and now we've got this spacing in between. But we could really try to get these images all the same height so that this is aligned correctly. But for now, let's carry on and try to link this up to the property show page. So at the end we'll come back and clean up some of these image sizing and styles just to polish things off, but I want to initially focus on getting all the functionality in place first. So let's add a link around this thumbnail, and that's going to go to the property path. So that will show the show view for that property. However, right now our show view is like this. We have this basic details and the ability to edit the property. So we want to actually show the front end version of this page. So we want to see like the description of the property, the gallery, things like that. So that will be for non-logged in users. And since it's for non-logged in users, we will need to hide the sidebar on this page. So we don't want to see the ability to add properties and all the rest of it. So that will be taken out for this specific page on the properties controller. So first of all, we've got that part working. So we'll need to basically create this instance variable to say that whether or not to show that sidebar. So you can create a method for this and only run it on certain views within this controller. So we can set that to accept the show view. So that will be our property profile page, this show view. So in here we will say that show sidebar as true, and that will run for every page except for that profile page. And we can see here that there's some issue with the styling on this page. So the top navigation has some weird styling right now. And one thing to note here is that we can see that the styles are restricted for just the dashboard and the properties model or controller. So we want to just wrap this in a show sidebar class, and we will basically output that class if the show sidebar instance variable is set. So let's add this to our body, the class to our body tag. So we can see that our top navigation, the styling has been fixed. However, the sidebar is still not quite right. And it looks like, if you look at the class on the body tag, that there's no space between the view, the action, and the show sidebar. So let's go and fix that now. Just need to add an additional space between these classes. So now we can click through in the properties section to see that the sidebar is working on each of these pages, but on the dashboard it seems to be missing. So what we need to do for that, and we need to set the show sidebar within the dashboard controller, and we can just copy that across from our properties controller, and we can actually remove these unnecessary actions that we have in here. Just clean this up. And now that's working, that's good. So now let's log out, and we can click on the property, but we still need to style up that profile page. So before we do that, let's set up a new link here on the name of the property. So now we will start working on the profile page for the property. So this is probably one of the most important pages on the website, as it conveys all the information about an individual property, and it's front end, it's customer facing, so it's pretty important that we get all of the right information in here. So let's start by adding a container and a row. So we'll add some basic markup here, some Bootstrap markup to get the basic layout going. Now we're noticing that the content is actually hidden behind the top navigation area. So we can do something to try and push that down a little. And just by adding a small margin to the top of this container, we can see that that content is just peeking down under the navigation now. So in our public style sheet, we can set a padding top on the body element, and by doing that we can see that it pushes our content further down the page, so it's not hidden behind this navigation now. And what we'd like to do really is have a big background graphic here. It seems to be the best way to show a property using visuals. So we'd love to have a big background splash image of the property and then move that content for the name, address, price, etc. further down the page. So we can start by moving this information into a column, and we can see that it's all displayed underneath each other now. So let's get our image added to this page. So we'll just copy this across, and instead of thumbnail we'll set up a new helper called property photo. And if we go to our helper file now, we can just duplicate this and we can change this to the full size photo. And we're getting an error, so it looks like we've got a typo here. And now we can see that our image is loading. However, it doesn't really look that great on the front end. I think the better option would be to set this as a background image and make that photo the full width of the page. Okay, so we want to set a style here on this div, and we will output the asset URL for this property image. So we can say background image and pass in a URL, and we can use the class name that we've created on this div, the property main photo, to set a min height within our style sheet. And then we can also say, using that class, we can also say that the background image should cover the entire space of that div. So let's do that now. So we'll set a height of 500 pixels and the background image is set to cover. So let's return a URL instead of an image tag from this helper. So we'll set the asset URL and return that back to the user. And we can see that that's working quite nicely now, but there is this white space at the top that we have to look at. So it looks like our padding on the body that we were using before is a little bit too much. So we'll just set it to the height of the actual navigation bar itself. And that's starting to look pretty good right now. Overall, quite happy with that. So we've got the full width image at the top, we've got the details underneath, but we really want to add like contact information for that agent on the right side of the page and some additional information about the property too. So I'll just set some temporary info here just to see the layout. And we can render a partial here for the agent details. Let's create a new file for that. And this will output the account information once we have this completed, but we can just drop in something very temporary right now. So we can see on the site that we're comparing this to that we have a full name and we have a company name, and there should be really like a contact button or a call button to expose that user's details so that you can make a call to the agent. But we'll have a button here that says call contact, and we'll add a name. And then we will create a second button that is for emailing that agent. So back in our controller now, let's set the agent for this property. So we can say property.account, but we can see that there is no full name column set. So we could just create one like this and pass in first name and last name and return it as a string. But it's also saying that there is no company. So we'll set a temporary company method here. Obviously we'll need to add that to the account model, but let's just go with that for now. And then we can add a heading tag then for the name of that agent. and a paragraph for their information. So that's starting to look pretty good right now. We have agent details, property details, photograph. In the next video we will be adding the functionality for these buttons, but for now it's just about presentation. So there are a lot of things we could add to this, such as the ability to charge users to put a property on our website. So we could be charging them $10, $20 to make a listing. So that's going to do it for this video. If you've enjoyed this video, do give it a like and subscribe to the channel, as I create a lot of content around MVP building, so building these platforms really quickly using powerful Ruby on Rails technology. So if you enjoy this content, do subscribe to the channel. And I am also selling some of these templates on my website, so check out the link in the description if that's of interest to you. But otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video.